In light of the recent events, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danon, has stated, and I'm quoting him here, the state of Israel launched Operation Rising Lion tonight against Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure with the aim of eliminating an existential and immediate threat to the citizens of Israel and the entire world. The Iranian regime is blatantly violating international agreements, advancing towards nuclear weapons and operating a regional terror network. When the world is silent, Israel is acting. I call on the UN Secretary General and the members of the Security Council. This is a moment to make moral decisions. Stand by Israel or you will be partners in a dangerous silence. Unlike in the past, today we have a state, we have an army, and we are not waiting for those who want to destroy us to surprise us. And for latest, we're now being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. Susan, what can you tell us and how do we anticipate this situation to pan out going forward in light of all these latest developments that we're seeing?
Well, we're now hearing reports that Iran has activated its air defense systems. So the question remains whether or not there have been further attacks as we speak right now, your morning or evening, Iran's early morning in and around Tehran, or is this in other sites in other cities? We'll wait for confirmation regarding that. As you mentioned, we just moments ago got a statement from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danon, calling on the UN Security Council members to stand by Israel. This is a moment to make a moral decision. Stand by Israel or you will be partners in a dangerous silence. So we'll keep you updated on what happens at the United Nations and at the Security Council tomorrow, which is Friday. The latest that we know is that President Trump is expected to meet his cabinet at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. And also, there are conflicting reports right now. Reuters is reporting that Israeli officials said that President Trump and his administration were indeed aware and privy of these Israeli attacks against Iran. On the other hand, we're hearing the Wall Street Journal say that it was President Trump who on Monday talked to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and asked him to hold off on these attacks, notably at least until after nuclear negotiations that were expected to be held on Sunday in Oman.
Right, Susan, and we're also hearing from Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has said that Israel will receive a harsh punishment, and we know that the escalation is nowhere near de-escalating. It's only going to escalate, if at all, from this point onwards. And in what form and shape do we expect this escalation to actually manifest?
Israeli officials are saying that Iran is planning on deploying some 600 missiles towards Israel. Now, this is according to Israeli sources. We, of course, don't have that confirmation coming from Iran. U.S. officials, the last time we heard was from Marco Rubio, who said that Israel decided to act unilaterally. The response is highly unlikely to take, for example, 12 days like it did last year during the Biden administration, where President Biden and the Biden administration, the United States indeed did help Israel in its air defenses. It's yet to be seen how the United States is going to be involved. For now, it appears that it's managing expectations and saying that this was a unilateral attack, but should Israel get attacked by Iran, will the United States step in or not? And also it's important to note that right now about 40,000 U.S. troops are stationed in and around the Middle East region. The USS Vincent is in the Arabian Sea. It is equipped with F-35 fighter jets. So the United States is on high alert, and this, of course, comes amid Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently saying that non-essential personnel and their family members were evacuated yesterday from the region and key sites. So this could escalate very well into an all-out war. The Iranian media was saying that the Islamic Republic is going to declare an all-out war against Israel in the coming hours, but it appears that their top brass and military officials are currently meeting right now.
Right, Susan, and we know that even though the U.S. is saying that Israel acted unilaterally, but there will always be speculations given the history that U.S. has had with Israel and the fear support that is lended over the years in all the conflicts that have been panning out in West Asia. And now with both the sides not willing to back down and it's only going to escalate further, how do we expect Washington to actually balance these two conflicting sparring parties going forward? And how is this meeting actually going to chart out the course for the next action that we're expected to see?
Yeah, this is such an active situation right now. It's hard to imagine that there's going to be any sort of cooling down, especially considering the fact that there are incoming reports that Iran's top brass generals have possibly been killed during these strikes. So it wasn't just infrastructure sites. I do want to say that it's also important to note that we are hearing from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, that it is closely monitoring this situation in Iran. The agency can now confirm that Natanz site was among the targets. As you know, and as our viewers know, Natanz is Iran's main nuclear site. And the agency is also in contact with Iranian authorities regarding radiation levels. So now the question is whether or not there was any kind of radiation released from these attacks. The reason I'm mentioning all of these is because all of these lead to how Iran will decide to retaliate. We know there's going to be a retaliation. We do know that the United States has said that it's going to stand by Israel. It's said it countless times, numerous times. And we also know that Israel's air defense is not going to be able to handle a barrage of missiles coming from Iran if that's the case without U.S. support. Nonetheless, let's wait for President Trump and see how he's going to try to, manage this situation. As you mentioned, tomorrow morning, I think we're going to hear a lot more about where the United States stands. But, these coming hours are going to be very crucial because, again, you ask about how it's going to develop. Are American personnel, notably in and around Iraq, are they going to be a target by Iran in the coming hours? Are they going to be hit in any sort of way where the United States then has no choice but to retaliate because its troops and its infrastructure was targeted by Iran?
Right, Susan, retaliation is imminent. We've heard from Iran, and the armed forces have said that they are going to take a strong response, and it's going to be quite catastrophic. This is our understanding of the situation, and it's all following up from also from what we've heard from the spokesperson for the General Staff of the Armed Forces, who stated that the armed forces will certainly respond to the attack and warned that Israel will pay a heavy price along with the United States. That's also been roped in. Now, how do we anticipate that Israel is going to tackle the situation? We already know that the airspace has been closed, schools have been shut in preparation, but what other preparations are in place to handle an attack like that? Because it was Israel who started it, and they have called it a preemptive attack. So just help us understand what kind of arrangements are in place to tackle the situation.
Right, so we do know that the security situation in Israel is on high alert. The airspaces have been closed in both countries. Of course, it's a state of emergency across Israel, notably in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. But I also want to note that within the U.S. administration and even some staunch Trump supporters, they say that this is Israel's war. They don't want the United States to get involved. We're also hearing from a number of Democratic senators and congressmen who have come out and said that they've essentially condemned Israel's attack against Iran, saying that this is no way to go about it. We don't want the United States to be involved. So you have the Democrats, you have the isolationists in Trump's camp who don't want to have anything to do with this. But as you mentioned, it's very hard to imagine how the United States is going to react. I think we have to first see how Iran is going to retaliate, and then we'll get a better understanding on how the United States is going to react. But it seems that because Israel had plans for this strike, then they are anticipating some kind of retaliation, and it appears that the Israeli army and reserve are on a state of high alert, and they're prepared for what's to come, at least in the first round of retaliations from Iran.
Right, Susan, and we've heard from the United States where they're trying to divorce themselves from the latest conflict that's brewing, and they've said that Israel has acted unilaterally, which there are public speculations about that. And how is U.S. actually going to make sense of the situation is yet to be seen. But what's your assessment of the conflict going, which is escalating right now, and how do we see it panning out in terms of the optics, the global optics, and Washington's role in this conflict?
So President Trump was sort of talking about how he wanted these negotiations to really go through. Of course, he wanted some kind of deal with Iran. But I think it was clear that the Trump administration had a very different approach than, for example, the Obama administration when they started the JCPOA and the nuclear deal that went on and on for years and ultimately, was undesirable, and even U.S. officials and Capitol Hill wasn't able to get behind it, and President Obama was ultimately forced to sign it as a treaty because Congress was no way going to back some kind of Iran nuclear deal, even though, the United States was involved in those negotiations. President Trump hoped to reach some kind of agreement with Iran, but in May, and I think it was around May 20th, the Iran supreme leader came out and said that he was very pessimistic when it came to these kinds of negotiations with the United States, notably the Trump administration. So while President Trump would come out in public, and the optics was that he was hoping to get close to a deal with Iran, it just appeared that the two sides keep getting further and further apart. And ultimately, I think that Israel, had given sort of this ultimatum to the United States that we're just running out of time and Israel is going to ultimately attack Iran. I think the optics right now is, at least for now, the United States appears to say that this was a unilateral attack. Whether or not they were informed or not, we'll have to wait and see what concrete statement, if any, is ever going to come out. But again, it's very hard to imagine that the United States is not part of this conflict in one way or the other, despite the fact that it was hoping to negotiate some kind of nuclear deal. Now, European countries, their approach has been different. They say that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon under any circumstances. They believe that negotiations is the best path forward. Whether or not they'll side with Israel's attack, I think it'll depend on country to country. But I think that once we have daylight here in the United States and in the West, Europe as well, I think you're going to try to see these European leaders come together and try to call for some kind of restraint. I do anticipate some kind of United Nations Security Council meeting in the near future, if not tomorrow, perhaps during the weekend. But nonetheless, I think that the international community is going to try to come together to put a lid, at least on these military attacks, because this can really pan out into an absolute catastrophe. Again, I think it's very noteworthy that the IAEA came out with a statement saying that we're monitoring radiation levels. That means that there's a concern that some kind of radiation can be released due to these Israeli attacks on Iranian nuclear sites.
Right, Susan, you rightly pointed out now with the IAEA's new statement, and it's come from the Director General, Rafael Mariano Grossi, who has said that IAEA is closely monitoring the deeply concerning situation in Iran. The agency can confirm Natan's site among targets, and the agency is in contact with Iranian authorities regarding the radiation levels, which is a clear marker that there are going to be serious escalation in this conflict going forward. And we're also in contact with our inspectors in the country. This is what Grossi has said. And once again, to reiterate for our viewers, the latest that we're getting is from IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi, who has said that, and I'm quoting him here, the IAEA is closely monitoring the deeply concerning situation in Iran. The agency can confirm that Natan's site, among other targets, were hit. The agency is in contact with Iranian authorities regarding radiation levels, and we are also in contact with our inspectors in the country. This is the latest we're getting in the conflict that's brewing in West Asia. Latest that we're getting, Iranian media reports confirm that a senior Revolutionary Guards commander and prominent nuclear scientist were among those that were killed in Israel's recent attack on Iran. Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, who's a high-ranking commander, was reportedly martyred. Well, according to state television, and additionally, nuclear scientists Mohammad Mehdi Tehranchi and Fayardun Abbasi were targeted and killed in the attacks. This is reported by Tasneem News Agency. This is the latest we're getting from the conflict that's brewing in West Asia. And we have Reports from the Iranian media that have confirmed that a senior Revolutionary Guards commander and a prominent nuclear scientist were among those that were killed in Israel's recent attacks on Iran. Now, among those killed were Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, who's a high-ranking commander, and he was reportedly martyred in the conflict. Now, according to state television, additionally, nuclear scientists Mohammad Mehdi and Danon Abbasi were targeted and killed in the attack. Well, this as per reports by Tasneem news agency. We've also heard from Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has said that Israel will receive a harsh punishment. This is according to state TV, and Iran's Khamenei wants that Israel faces bitter and a painful fate. And we're getting more reports from Iran and from the Iranian media. We're getting this report that confirms that a senior Revolutionary Guards commander and a very prominent nuclear scientist were among those who were killed in Israel's recent attack on Iran. Now, we also know that Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, who's a high-ranking commander, he was reportedly martyred, according to state television. And that's not all. We also know that nuclear scientists Mohammad Mehdi Tehranchi and Danon Abbasi were also targeted and killed in the attack, as reported by Tasneem news agency.